Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Candace. Welcome to WTF.
Women Talk Finance.
Our WTF podcast will take a simplified approach to finance, and we talk about investing, a topic we believe women don't talk enough about.
We'll discuss common financial questions and challenges that women face in business and throughout their personal lives. A quick disclaimer before we start. The opinions that we're going to discuss are just that. They're just our opinions. We are not here to give investment advice. We will be talking about who we are, what we're about, and what information we'll be bringing to you.
We'll be speaking to women from all walks of life whose experience will help us frame some of the issues and challenges that women face today in business. Maybe you're starting your own company and investing in your future.
We're going to talk about knowing your worth in the workplace, how to ask for that raise, and we'll also talk about investing, something we believe that women don't talk about enough. You'll find this is a common theme throughout our podcast to come. How to invest, different kinds of investments, and how to pay yourself first. We're going to give you actionable information that will allow you to understand how to make your future better starting today. And we are here today with Katie Powell. Tell us who you are.
So I'm Katie Powell. I'm not as fancy as Catherine Ann, kind of like sets me up to be. But I don't know. I'm just here.
Tell us about you. What
brought you in off the street?
Off the street.
You looked
I was
cute.
yanked in here. I was wearing all black, so I fit in with you guys. So that was the criteria. I previously was a consultant for nonprofits. I used to do a lot of financial sustainability planning for nonprofit organizations, and recently have moved into the fintech space. So working with kind of a singular organization that is seeking to scale their operations, but also really kind of be a game changer in terms of creating equitable finance kind of space, equal access to financial wealth building.
And we know this is a really important topic for you.
Yes.
Tell us what it means to you, first of all, like define financial literacy. What does that even look like, sound like? What does it mean? Yeah. And then why is it so important to you?
That's an interesting question. Well, I would say I recently became aware of something that kind of shook my foundation in this space, which was the distinction between financial literacy and financial confidence in women. So I have been passionate about financial literacy from my upbringing. My dad was in the financial space, and so he really impressed upon me the importance of financial literacy. And kind of growing up in a space like that, I didn't understand how unique maybe that was, particularly being a young woman. And in pursuing my master's, I was one of few women in an MBA program, particularly geared towards finance. And so over time, I became really aware that maybe this is an opportunity for me to share that with other women and get them engaged in this space in a way that maybe they're not socialized to be in. But this distinction that I just came across, which was financial literacy, which is really just like the basics, right? You get information, you learn about the concepts, and all of a sudden now you're knowledgeable, right? But there's this kind of increasing evidence that women are less financially confident. And so even when we're literate, even when we have the knowledge, even when we have degrees in this space, we are less confident to kind of actualize that information.
That's so interesting, and just even kind of like gives me a shiver to hear it out loud. Like we know that intuitively.
Yeah.
I think it's true. I think women have a tendency to have maybe even further qualifications in a lot of spaces, not just finance, but their confidence might be lower than their male counterparts that have equal literacy level, right? So I think it's an interesting concept and makes complete sense. Obviously, spoiler alert, last name Powell.
Are we related?
We share a father. You heard it here first. But I think for us, we had a really different upbringing than most because financial conversations were every day, normal conversation. We sit at dinner, we talk about money. Money was something we talked about amongst each other as siblings because we were eager to earn money, all of us. We all were very entrepreneurial. We were always hiring each other or trying to sub hire for a task we were getting paid more for. So the financial conversations were really natural for us, but I think that's unique. And the more and more I talk to other people, I've recognized you and I are very comfortable having financial conversations and going very deep on money. Outside of us, I don't think you and I talk to other women about money.
Well, I'm so happy you raised this, because I had a realization the other day. In this kind of virtual space, right, I'm privy to my fiance's conversations with his buddies over the phone. And I realized he actively bets money with his friends. Like, if there's something to be right about, like, he'll be like, you want to bet?
Money's on the line.
Yeah.
Right.
And he'll collect it. Like, that's what was shocking to me, is I would never bet my girlfriend's money. Like, because I know they work hard for it. I don't know what their financial situation is. But this, like, I became aware of kind of two patterns. One is, I don't know the answers to those questions because I don't ask. To your point, Candace, like, I don't talk with my girlfriends about money. The second is that I think creates this negative feedback loop of which money isn't fun. I don't have a space to, like, play with my money and be free and, like, have this entree to talking with my girlfriends about money, because it's not something we even do at a very basic level.
And this goes to the point about, I think, Candace, you made it about overeducation, maybe overqualification. There's this unspoken maybe stereotype or unspoken assumption that maybe women don't know as much. They're not involved in money conversations, and they need to educate up. And even with all the extra education, they're still somehow not the natural fit in money conversations.
Exactly.
And this goes right to you can have literacy, but maybe not necessarily confidence.
Are you confident, right? And it's something that I would encourage, I think, you guys and listeners, right, to really consider, like, how do we play with our money a little bit more? Not be frivolous, not live without above your means, but to engage in, like, a narrative building of not being threat-minded about money, right? Like, ask your girlfriends how they're doing.
Talk about it.
Exactly.
Just talk about it.
Be like, what are your financial goals? Like, not only does that help you hold accountable to your financial goals when you share them with others, but it also creates, like, a modeling effect, right, for your friends to know that they can talk with you about money, particularly women, obviously you all, who are financially literate and perhaps maybe a little more confident. You can create a space where people can come talk with you about it and build that confidence for themselves.
Interested in investing in cryptocurrency? It's a simple way to diversify your portfolio. But what about the impact that cryptocurrency mining has on the environment? We have a solution. It's called CryptoWell. CryptoWell uses eco-friendly technological infrastructure to generate power for cryptocurrency mining. Accredited investors go to rowcapitalgroup.com to power your portfolio with sustainable crypto mining. Every day you hear about people making money by investing in IPOs and startups. But what about you? These kinds of investments are simply not available to Main Street investors. At Row Capital Group, we are committed to providing access to strategic, early-stage, primarily low-market correlated investment opportunities. Accredited investors go to rowcapitalgroup.com for more information. Row Capital Group, empowering your financial journey.
During the pandemic, women who had traditionally been more in the saver category became investors. And I think as women as savers, that's more also an undertone that has traditionally been in place that we can shift away from with conversation, right? And women as savers, when I talk to my girlfriends, it's like, if you're a man, and I don't mean to overgeneralize, but they'll talk about the things they're spending on, the new car, the vacations, the
They
house
have no problem
upgrade.
saying a price tag for something. I don't think you and I ever, like...
But we do it like, oh, I got this sweater, it was on sale.
Yeah, I did
Almost
that too.
like justified.
I did
like
that
it's-
last night.
Like I'm a smart, I'm smart, I'm a
spend my money
saver.
wisely.
Yeah, and if we were to do the opposite, there would be this, I think, little bit of judgment, like, oh, she talks a lot about money.
For sure. A man will have no problem going, that's a $10,000 watch right there. And like braggadocious about it and like lifting himself up. And women are like, you'll never believe the deal. And I think it is. It's like we're kind of taught to, we're squirreling away. And I'm wondering if some of it is, one, women's earning capacity in the past has not been huge, right? So whatever money you get, you better save because there's a time clock on your ability to earn. And that time clock is kind of up when you have a baby. And also, you may have to bail out. Like you may bear the burden of the financial situation. So you better have money set aside. But can you talk about how that's shifted and maybe how it's shifted or where we need to really focus in spaces where there's not a lot of money to put away. There's still a huge group of people that they don't have that extra money to be stashing away.
Well, I think there's a couple of points that I would raise. The first is I think that we can do a better job of having education that meets the needs and desires of women. Like, I think a lot of this kind of do your own research culture can be obfuscated into, like, there's so much information out there and it's hard to discern what is good information, what's marketing material, particularly in a financial space. And so when we talk about women being predominantly savers, right, in terms of patterned with money, we need to think about, well, what investment approaches would make sense for them? Like, what would give entree into an investment cycle for women that would make them comfortable, right? It's not going to be the high risk investment portfolios. It's not going to be trending portfolios, right? It's going to be information that makes sense for them to plan over the long term, almost like savings accounts. Now,
so they can also individualize it for themselves too, because not every woman is going to want to spend, invest, save in the same way.
Exactly. And so taking ownership of that, right? But also like meeting people where they are and saying, hey, there are pretty aggressive investment strategies that tend to get the buzz, right? In the communities of investments. And so saying, that's not for everyone. If you are the person responsible for budgeting for your household, you're not going to be super risky with your money. And so getting and elevating additional resources to women about conservative investment approaches that have efficacy, I think is something that kind of starts to move that needle a little bit, because just building some confidence, even at that small, less risky level, can give entree again to the larger wealth building platform. Another point that I would make is that I'm super excited that there are technologies now that are making investment not a fee for service model. And so that gives women who don't have a lot of disposable income the ability to let their money work for them without paying unnecessary fees. And so I think that we're kind of on the precipice of a changing marketplace where there is going to be additional consumers able to move their money in this way. And now it's just a matter of getting the information that makes sense for them in their hands, the resources in their hands, build up that literacy, and then opportunities to kind of play around with investing, not with really high stakes, right?
Yeah, and move into the confidence level. Once you're in it and you become versed in it and you play with it a little bit, you little by little build up your confidence. Absolutely. And I think you touched on a point, I don't know if you used the word access, but I think it was definitely a theme that you were touching on. Just even allowing women to say, okay, it's out there, I know how to access it, or I know how to begin accessing that information, accessing those opportunities. I think in the past, a lot of women wouldn't know the first place to start. I know I wouldn't have known the first place to even start looking to get access to, okay, I've got $1,000 I want to invest. Where do I begin looking to know where to put that?
Right. Right. I agree. Can you talk a little bit more for our listeners about the fee for service? Because I think that's an important point.
Well, I think it's traditionally been kind of a barrier for people, for a large swath of our community, right, to not be able to even put forward their money to participate in this market. And I think ultimately the theme is financial confidence, right? So going back to that, it's if I, even feeling literate in this, if I feel like, oof, I don't know enough to put that $1,000, right, into the market, maybe I'll just go to someone who, this is their job. I'm just going to pay them to do it. It is you relinquish your ownership of your money at that point. It's not to say that that's a bad strategy, but it is to say it's not the only way. Well and said. In the age of information, right, we have so much information at our fingertips. I think that's why we can feel maybe a little constrained, right? We don't know which information to trust. We don't have that baseline confidence in ourselves that we're equipped to move our money around in a way that will build our wealth. We're not talking about it with our friends to see if they're, have good themes going on, if they have good strategies, or if they're hearing anything in their industries, right, that could help us move our money. And so I think that there's this oversaturation of information, and being able to resist the urge to just put it in someone else's hands and let them do it is, I think, moving toward this new marketplace of no fees for that. And so in the age of technology, we're moving away from the overhead, right? We don't need to pay for financial advisors all the time. You can engage in platforms that have, like, one example is Robinhood, right? They have a really easy platform to use that isn't a fee for service model, where you can put your money in, and then every trade you're not getting barred down by a fee, which you would in a traditional investment broker. And so I think that gives a little bit more access to people who may not be able to compromise, 8% of their investment to just paying someone to manage it. If you feel like you can move your money, if you feel like you want to just build your confidence with it, having your hands in the details is really worthwhile.
Yeah. That was a big driving force behind our digital marketplace, Row Capital, was, a lot of times finding those alternatives was only through a fee-for-service type model. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a really important point you made, is there are more coming out, and specifically in the alternative space, we're really excited to have products available that you had to know a guy. Yeah. And yes, it was almost always a guy. But you had to know a guy to get in to that investment. And it was that kind of cigar room talk, how deals got done. And so creating these digital platforms where there is a space for you to start playing, and like lowering that threshold, that financial threshold, so it's a little bit more accessible. I think it's hopefully adding to that confidence level, right? That's the goal, is just adding to that confidence level and talking about it, sharing it with your friends. There's no stigma about it. We can talk. I shared with her an investment 2 days ago.
Yep.
Was quick to send her that link.
I got it, and I clicked too. It's this ability to participate, feeling like you have an ability to participate, where in the past maybe you felt like you were excluded from participation, whether you didn't have access, you didn't have understanding, you needed support, you needed someone else to manage your money for you if you felt like you had money to manage.
Yeah. Needed somebody to tell you what to do.
It's 2022. It is shifting. Robinhood, there's so many apps like that out there. You can start with $100, $50, I think. Yeah. Go in and just start playing with your money and build your confidence. Allow yourself. There may be some failure, right? That happens, but that's part of a natural conversation. Win some, lose some, no big deal talking about it. And then having this takeaway where you're like, I participated. I downloaded that app. I put some money in the market. I'm participating.
I practiced. Wow. Like I got to, it's money that I like to think of when I'm building my confidence, is like, this is money that I would spend on something else for myself, right? Like maybe I've been saving and I wanted to go out to a dinner or something. It's not to say you shouldn't compromise on those things, because I think that's what you should be spending your money on too. But it's thinking about, like, I'm spending the money. The goal is to grow it. But if not, at least it's a learning curve. Like, I am practicing this confidence ability. I'm practicing my ability to engage in this space in a way that I will hopefully feel comfortable in and be more equipped when, this wealth starts to grow and I have more that I'm willing to kind of put into this space.
I think there's, not to like totally shift gears here, but I think there's some messaging that women get, and there's big financial talking heads that are like, give up the Starbucks, give up, drive a a dumpy car and you need to save, you need to be a saver. And you're looking at 3 savers. We're all pretty good at saving. However, we also all do believe in taking care of ourselves and doing things that bring us personal value, investing in ourselves that way that aren't maybe monetarily, but are fulfilling and feel like I'm working so hard for this money. You're right. Yeah, I'm going to feel good. I'm going to get the Starbucks when I want it. I'm going to drive a car that I want to drive. Talk a little bit about maybe because we're all very fortunate to be in that space. How can women who are not in that space yet, maybe who aren't financially literate, maybe they haven't hit those goals yet financially, that have afforded them the ability to kind of have that flexibility in their financial freedom. Can you talk about that group of women? Because I think it's a really important group to address, and how do we get them to that next level?
Yeah, I think the first answer would be like complex issues require complex solutions. So I think that fundamentally there are so many avenues that we can use to lift up these women, help them lift themselves. We're not doing anything to them, but helping them, build wealth, have a healthy relationship with money, have additional access to opportunities for additional streams of income. I think that's a particularly predatory space. We've seen, additional streams of income, right, be kind of targeted to women who most need that and maybe not be the most functional revenue opportunities. So I think that is where the importance of financial literacy comes in, right? What is a predatory, industry that kind of preys on women who need additional streams of income, and how to avoid those? What percent of your income should you be saving, and what should your savings goals be? So that's that financial literacy, just getting the information out there. I think ultimately, though, there's this kind of broader conversation that we can be having about having a healthy relationship with money as women. And I think what that goes to is exactly what you said, Candace, like actively rejecting the socialization that we should not be spending our money. Like, I think millennials in particular, we've heard that by buying our avocado toast, that is the reason we can't, as a generation, afford homes. And that is absolutely not true. So I think that
because homes are $1.5 million for a starter.
Yeah. And that's the equivalent of one single avocado toast. Yeah. And so I think, again, there are so many reasons why we need to be looking actively to support and achieve better access. But I think fully, no matter where you kind of fall in this access and privilege spectrum, having a healthy relationship with money, I think, is fundamentally like a women's issue. I think even for me, growing up in a household, and Candace, I think you have the same experience, like we grew up in a household that actively talked about money, and I'm still threat-minded about money. And so whenever I purchase something for myself, I have to take a moment and be incredibly mindful. Like, the money that I make is a reflection of my effort. And I need to be grateful, not just for all the abundance in my life, all of the things that have gotten me here, but I need to also be grateful for me and my effort because I got here. And I think relishing in that and being okay to spend my money, invest my money, save my money for my goals allows me to have a healthier relationship with my money, not be so threat-minded, because I think ultimately that perception can be a pretty big barrier to you being willing to engage in any wealth building. Of course, before you get there, you have to kind of achieve those access points, the ability to close the gender pay gap, perhaps. There's kind of big macroeconomic principles here. Yeah.
I think if our listeners are catching this podcast, they may not even realize that they're already doing it.
Yeah.
You are, by listening, participating in a conversation about money with other women.
Yeah.
And there's tons of other resources out there, just like this. Other podcasts. Go on YouTube. Yeah. There's free resources.
Talk to your friends.
Talk to your friends. It's just, conversation is free. A lot of the resources out there are free. It's content. Just start listening and then ask the questions and have the conversations with those that you think may engage with you on it. And then from there, Candace, you mentioned Row Capital. This digital marketplace, they're popping up everywhere, right? Row is different in that there's a team of professionals doing due diligence. Like you said, you may not have access unless you know a guy, and it may literally be a guy. But there is access. Rogue Capital has access to some of those deals. And there's a team. We've got the guys and gals. And there's a group of people doing diligence on them.
Right.
So you may not know right away. That might not be part of your financial literacy to due diligence a deal, but you can learn that there are other groups out there that are doing that.
Right.
And then once those deals have gone through, those due diligence steps, they're now available for you. So there you are. You can participate and have access to those types of things.
I think women have 2 levels of value that we go into, and it's our weight and what we're paid. And so having somebody know those 2 numbers is real vulnerable. If I go in and I tell you what my weight is and what I'm paid, you know all of it now. You know the dirty, and that is a very vulnerable place.
2 things my 11-year-old stepson keeps asking me, and I'm like, he's like, how tall are you? He wants to know all the numbers. How old are you? How tall are you? How much you weigh?
Because we're taught very early that those are the value setters. That's your value right there in those little boxes. That's your value, and that is what you're bringing out to the world every single day, and that's what the world's judging you on. And I think that's what's really difficult about talking about it, because those are the age too. At a certain level,
and how many
you don't.
Kids do you
and
have?
How many kids? Yeah, it's all a numbers thing, and somehow that makes up our value. That makes up our worth in these conversations. So let's shatter that, because I don't think we can shatter the glass ceiling until we've shattered some of those value stereotypes that are really holding us back.
Certainly. I also think too, when we think broadly about kind of that glass ceiling, right? Thinking about the pay gap, that does not close until we have pay transparency. And so being someone who's confident in telling your girlfriends, this is what I make. Here are my stock options. Here's my benefit package. And when they're going up for a job, actively holding their feet to the fire of did you do your research? How can I help you?
That's fantastic.
I think that's too low. Maybe make sure you take a day to consider the offer. Come back. Let's figure it out together. You're not in this alone. I think we have this tendency to feel like you compromise gratitude when you ask for more. You can be grateful for an offer.
Absolutely.
But you still need to be holding yourself to the same value as your male counterparts.
Well, and it goes back to what do you value? How do you value yourself? Yeah. Do you value yourself, and where do you value yourself? Exactly. And it stinks to have to put a number on that, because we shouldn't have to. But it is one part of the formula. Knowing, okay, I am trying to actively close that, the pay gap. I want to talk with these things with my friends. I'm trying to actively change these things, and I value myself. I know that I have the ability to participate in those conversations and participate in that change.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would say don't let somebody else define your value, right? Yeah. So I think you always go back. I think you always go back.
Well, you taught me that, and then I did. I was so uncomfortable. And even knowing all of this, being educated, right? Just fundamentally knowing the dynamics of these difficult conversations and still being a shrinking violet, wow, that's so generous. I guess I'm worth that. Okay. And, having someone hold me accountable, and then knowing if I think that helped me, because it helped me know that the next time I saw Candace, she'd say, how'd it go? And I would have to tell her, I went back, or I just took the offer. And just having an accountability partner to you can maybe help you step out of your comfort zone a little bit more than you're willing to, in the shadows.
And just so you know, your value was the same to me no matter what.
So you told her, go back?
I did.
And you went back?
I went back.
And you got what you...
I got what I wanted.
I love it. Okay, good. Awesome. Thank you for being here with us, Katie, and thank you for all of your insights. We're going to wrap up, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Women Talk Finance.